In this final video for analyzing the firm, we now want to reconnect the idea of resources and capabilities and assessing them to the potential for competitive advantage. As you recall from the first video, we talked about the idea of the existence of an economic moat as a way to think about competitive advantage. Does it have superior financial performance relative to its rivals? And then is that superior financial performance defendable? And that defines the width of the economic moat. We then talked about this process, which we have now almost completed, where we define the firm's resources and capabilities, and now we want to go about this step 2 of appraising the firm's resources and capabilities in terms of their importance and relative strength. Firms that are strategically important and in which the firm has a relative strength yield a potential for a sustainable competitive advantage. What this means is now thinking about the firm's core competence. In the last video we discussed resources and capabilities. We now want to think about the core competence, which is the one or two unique strengths that are embedded within the firm that distinguish it from the rivals. And another good way of thinking about this is, if we think about a customer, what is it about your firm's product or service that makes them choose you over their rivals? What is the unique part of the offering, your unique strength that you're able to provide to the customer? As we start to think about the core competence and the profit earning potential of the underlying resources and capabilities, we focus on 3 particular elements that make something more likely to yield competitive advantage. The first thing is the extent to which the competitive advantage is established. In other words, how important is that resource or capability to creating that economic moat, to just the existence of the moat itself. This has to do with having a resource and or capability that, one, is scarce. In other words, it's unique in the industry and very few firms, if any, besides you have it. And then 2, it is strategically relevant. It's valued by customers within the industry. That resource and capability allows you to do something that customers want. The second aspect in terms of the profit earning potential has to do more with the sustainability or the width of the moat. How wide is that moat? How long can we protect this advantage that we just discussed in the first point? And the sustaining of competitive advantage first has to do with durability. For example, for the resource and or capability, what's its useful lifespan? For example, we think about over time things wear out and or are the value starts to be decline over time. And so we want to think about how long the duration that capability or resource provides us an advantage. The second is the ability of the firm to which the resource and capability is mobile across companies. So if we have a unique resource or capability, is it mobile and can it be acquired by our rivals? For example, can they poach employees and then compete away our advantage, reducing its sustainability? And then finally is replicability, the extent to which a resource or capability can be built by other firms that copies ours or substitutes for ours. And what we're thinking about the ability of our rivals to look and see at what we're doing for our customers and then build their own capability or resource or set of resources which allows them to do the same thing or even something better, which will then reduce our own sustainability of our advantage. So once we have defined the extent to which competitive advantage is established, in other words, the size of the moat and then the width of the moat, we then have to think about who generates or who keeps the returns for that competitive advantage. And this has to do with the ownership of property rights. Again, here we're concerned about the mobility of our employees and whose rights own the competitive advantage and where is it tied to. If the property rights for that competitive advantage, the source of that competitive advantage, are mobile, we want to make sure we lock those down through establishing property rights, non-compete contracts, or maybe patents, things like that. A second element that deals with appropriation is the bargaining power. And again, in particular, if there are specific employees or groups of employees that have bargaining power, they may be able to appropriate some of the competitive advantage or some of the profits from the competitive advantage for their own use. And then lastly, how embedded is these resources are these resources and capabilities in the firm. The more embedded these are, the more likely the firm has power because they are not mobile and they are not able to be separated. Therefore, the firm will appropriate the returns. Thus, what we are essentially trying to do here is demonstrate the key factors that are important in understanding, one, the extent of our competitive advantage, and then two, how likely we are to sustain it over time, and then three, how likely are we to keep the profits within the firm versus someone else being able to take value from us. The final step in internal analysis is then focusing on understanding which resources and capabilities we should build our strategy upon. And this 2x2 is very helpful here. If you think about in the bottom left here, we have resources and capabilities that have low strategic importance. In other words, they're not valuable to our consumers or our competition in the industry, our ability to compete in the industry, sorry. And we have a low relative strength. These are irrelevant and not worthy of our focus. On the upper left-hand side, we have resources and capabilities where we have relative strengths relative to our rivals, but again, they're not valuable or key to competing in the industry. These are superfluous. While we have them, we probably don't want to build a strategy based on them. On the upper right-hand corner, we have capabilities and resources in which we have relative strengths, and they are valuable and strategically important for the industry. And these are the resources and capabilities which should be the focus of what we build our strategy upon, and really try to leverage these to either develop and or maintain competitive advantage and try to sustain it over time. And then lastly, in the bottom right, we have key weaknesses, these are strategically important resources and capabilities in terms of we need them to compete in the industry, but we're relatively weak relative to our rivals. And here the goal is to try and either obtain the ones we're missing or try to design a strategy that limits our exposure to our rivals possessing these and we don't. And thus we'll try and see if we can protect our weakness or try and find a way to close the gap with our rivals. And then again, that can be part of our strategy formulation.